Hi everyone, thanks for coming. So, I'm afraid of closets, and I know that that sounds really weird, but it's not weird. What's weird is when I tell you that I'm like 99% sure that it's E.T.'s fault. In order for me to tell you how that Oscar-nominated alien testicle became the thing of nightmares for me, I have to go back to my early childhood to before I was potty trained. So let me paint a picture for you of an average Saturday morning in my house. I'm in my diapers, I'm like 2 or 3 years old, and I'm sitting on the couch. My mom's on my left, my dad's on the right, and I'm watching Saturday morning Pokemon. And I feel a familiar grumble come from deep within my stomach. So, like every other 3-year-old that I know, I would politely, quietly excuse myself from the room, find an open closet, huddle into the corner, and proceed to take a shit. Which is perfectly normal, I know. Inevitably, one of my parents would find me by the subtle but still audible grunting, little 3-year-old me shitting up a storm in an open closet. And there'd be a knock at the door followed by a "Honey, are you okay in there?" And I'd respond with, which I think is totally justified, "Don't see me! Don't see me!" Over and over and over again. And they'd leave me alone. We had this unspoken understanding that I would just shit in closets. But from an early age, I developed a very trusting relationship with closets. I mean, I could poop in there unhinged. Unafraid that anybody was going to barge in on me. Of course, this is before I discovered bathrooms with locks. But forgive me, I wasn't potty trained yet. But I developed a really trusting relationship with closets, especially the one in my bedroom. That closet and we go way back. Those closets were like these 2 big white wooden planks that slid on these brass tracks really nicely. They had a nice little brass handle that fit my little hand really well. I had my most precious possessions in that closet. I had my diary in there, my stash of baseball cards and Pokemon cards. When I'd get in fights with my parents or my siblings, I'd run away to that closet and play Tetris on my Game Boy Color in the dark, pretending the world around me didn't exist and hoping nobody would find me. We had a good working relationship, me and that closet. At 7 years old, I strapped a mini basketball hoop to that closet and pretended like I, Alex Anhalt, 3'4", Orthodox Jew from Englewood, New Jersey, would make the NBA someday. At 8 years old, I stashed the $75 I'd accumulated from the tooth fairy in that closet. But at 9 or 10 years old, I'll never forget this, at a very impressionable age, my dad came home from Blockbuster with E.T. And it was a family movie, he said, so we could all participate. And after all, Steven Spielberg was Jewish, just like us, so we had to support him, obviously. I'm like 30 minutes into the movie, I'm relating to the main characters around my age, I'm into the movie. And then there's this one scene that terrified me, and I'm sure you're wondering, Alex, what are you talking about? E.T. is a heartwarming story about friendship against all odds. What could possibly be so scary about that? Well, I'll tell you. There's this one scene, like 30 minutes in, it's a famous scene where the main character lays out a trail of Reese's Pieces to bait E.T. out of this barn. And he's waiting there, and he's waiting and waiting, and finally, totally shrouded in shadow, out of these barn doors that look exactly like my closet doors, comes this wrinkly, old man's ballsack, with freaky long fingers out of his barn, and it looked like he was coming out of my closets right at me. And I freaked out. I said, "Dad, turn the movie off. I can't do this anymore." In an instant, the closets I had come to trust so much had become a terrifying space that I thought E.T. was going to live in. That night, I made my parents huddle into my tiny twin bed with me out of the fear that E.T. was going to come out of my closet looking for Reese's Pieces and instead just start eating me. My relationship with closets dramatically changed after this. I shunned them. I moved the stash of baseball cards and Pokemon cards out. I stopped hiding in my closet. I stripped the mini basketball hoop down and put it on my bedroom door, which had much less give and totally crushed the dreams of a rising NBA star within me. But Soon I developed what I like to call obsessive closet disorder, where I needed to keep my closets closed at all times, especially when I went to sleep. But this extended outside of my room, so you can imagine what it was like to be my friend when I was like 11 years old, because I would just walk around your house when I walked in, closing all your closets. And it was just totally normal for me. And none of my friends, they were all too weirded out to say anything. So this went unchecked for like too long. And soon it started to develop very real obsessive compulsive tendencies. So I had to slide my right door open, then the left, and shut the left, then the right. But soon just closing closets didn't satisfy my compulsiveness. It soon extended to fixing paintings and mirrors and family portraits. I'd spend like 2 hours going through all the rooms in my house just fixing things, closing closets and fixing paintings. And this went totally unchecked and developed into a very real case of OCD. But then came middle school and a baby brother, and my parents decided to renovate, and I got upgraded to a new room, liberated from the room with closets that constantly taunted me. And my new room had 2 closets now, which I'm sure you can imagine was pretty intimidating for me to go from 1 to 2. And at first, when I tried those closets, where my old closets were inconspicuous, they were quiet, they glid without a sound. These were really, really loud. And they had this latch on them that just made so much noise when you open and close them. So I was intimidated. And the first thought that I had was, well, what if E.T. clones himself, and then I have 2 E.T.s in 2 closets? I don't think I can handle that. But I immediately followed that thought up with, Alex, you've had your bar mitzvah now. You're a man, and even God said so. So sack up. And I figured I can't let God die, right? So I sacked up. And I got over my fear of E.T. living in my closets. However, I did not get over the necessity to keep my closets closed at all times, especially when I went to sleep. But fast forward a little bit until high school, and my relationship with closets began to change again because I needed to hide certain things all over again. So where my stash of baseball cards and Pokemon cards had once been stashes of beer cans, and shitty bottles of vodka took their place, my weed was safely stored at the bottom of a fake tennis ball can in the back of my closet. Mom and Dad, I know you thought it was in the sock drawer, so better luck next time. But I was remembering to feel what it was like to trust my closet again, to feel safe around my closet again. And then came junior year, the most soul-crushing year of a young adult's life, the year of the SATs, the year of horrible competition between friends. But thank God for this one kid in my grade named Nathan. Nathan had a solution for all of us. He threw open houses like 1 or 2 nights a weekend, which was great because he had the best setup ever. His dad was a realtor, and he had all these open houses ready to be shown. So Nathan would just say, hey Dad, what houses did you show this week? And his dad would give him a list, and he would just throw open houses in those open houses, which were literally ready, like set up for us to party, and we would go in and we would destroy them. And it wasn't our problem, that was Nathan's problem to clean up. But we would destroy them. We'd stay there until 3 or 4 a.m., just doing whatever, like our civic duty as teenagers, to have as much fun as possible. We weren't buried in SAT books, we were juniors. But it mattered to my parents, who cared more about my academics than I did. And they slapped a strict midnight curfew on me, which is really inconvenient. And they said, you have to text us at midnight when you're home, which I know they thought was really clever, but I'm sure you can imagine what I did. I just text them at 11:59 every night saying, hey, I'm home, have a good night. Never knowing if my parents were checking on me, because I was never home when I said I was, and were just totally expertly hiding their disappointment, or they were just blissfully unaware that I'd been breaking curfew. And this went on for 6 or 7 months, until this one morning in March, I'll never forget, I came home from Nathan's the night before at like 3 a.m., and I came down for breakfast at like 10 a.m. And my mom immediately hits me with, hey Alex, how'd you sleep? And I said, okay, fine. And she goes, well, I know you only got 7 hours of sleep last night. I know you like to sleep in on the weekends. Are you feeling okay? And I'm thinking, well, I got home at 12 in your mind. That's 10 hours. I said, Mom, what do you mean? And she says, well, I heard your closet's closed at like 3 a.m. last night, so I figured you got home around then. And I realized in an instant that my parents for 6 or 7 months had totally neglected the fact that I was breaking curfew, and they knew because my closets had given me away on day one because they were so fucking loud. But they just didn't care. They knew I was a good kid. Me, I was humiliated. In an instant, the closets I had finally learned to trust all over again betrayed me just like that. But I think the moral of the story here is that now that you know all this about me, don't invite me over to your house, because if I feel at home, I might shit in your closet.